The Germans thought they were inspecting a wrecked ship. In reality, they were standing on a bomb the size of a destroyer. March 28, 1942. A cold wind swept across the docks of Saint-Nazaire as Captain Karl Mecke stepped onto the deck of a shattered British destroyer. The vessel was jammed nose first into the massive steel gates of the Normandy dry dock, her bow folded inward like crushed tin. Smoke drifted lazily from deep within her hull, the kind that came from fires long extinguished but never truly dead. Around him, German officers paced briskly, their boots clanging on twisted metal as engineers took measurements, muttering about repairs and salvage work. No one questioned why the ship had rammed the dock at full speed in the middle of the night. No one wondered why the British would sacrifice an entire destroyer just to dent a harbor gate. To the men of the Kriegsmarine, it was just another failed commando raid, costly, desperate, pointless. But beneath their feet, hidden behind layers of steel and deception, the clock had already begun to tick. In less than 12 hours, this quiet wreck would erase every man standing on it and change the course of the naval war forever. The raid had unfolded under the cover of darkness. At precisely 1:34 a.m., HMS Campbeltown surged up the Lier estuary at a relentless 17 knots, her bow aimed with deadly precision at the gates of the Normandy dry dock, the only facility on the Atlantic coast capable of accommodating the massive battleship Tirpitz. British commandos had fought fiercely for hours, clearing each building, disabling pumping stations and sabotaging machinery, all to ensure the path to the dock would be chaotic for the Germans. By sunrise, the tide had turned. German forces pushed the commandos back, counting their losses. 169 British soldiers and sailors had fallen. Another 215 had been captured. On the surface, it appeared a costly yet ultimately futile raid. The destroyer sat jammed against the dock gates, a mechanical obstacle certainly, but nothing that German engineers couldn't eventually resolve. Captain Sir Karl Conrad Mecke, standing on the battered deck, noted every detail with clinical precision. The Campbeltown had undergone extensive modifications for this mission. Its forward gun turrets were removed, replaced with lighter armor, and the ship's silhouette was altered to mimic a German MO-class torpedo boat. The deception had worked perfectly, until the destroyer was already wedged inside the harbor's defenses. Clever, he thought. The British were meticulous and resourceful, but cleverness without effect was mere waste. Below deck, corvette officers and Captain Lothar Bourhen supervised the preliminary inspection. The engine rooms lay in ruin, the boilers cold and lifeless. Fires had consumed several compartments, while British demolition charges had neutralized areas the German guns hadn't reached. To the untrained eye, Campbeltown was a floating wreck, suitable only for scrap once salvaged. Yet, what remained entirely invisible to them were the 4.5 tons of explosives meticulously hidden within steel-encased compartments deep in the hull, masked by fuel tanks and structural supports. The British had transformed a once obsolete destroyer into a bomb of extraordinary sophistication. Even careful inspection yielded no hint of its deadly cargo. The explosives were stored in 24 depth charge cases, each filled with powerful amytol. The fusing system was elegantly simple, pencil detonators that relied on acid slowly eating through a wire to trigger the main charges. Once engaged, it was unstoppable. No procedure, no caution could prevent the destruction poised to erupt. The timers had been set before Campbeltown left English waters, calibrated for an 8-hour minimum delay, though environmental conditions could extend it slightly. As the morning light crept across Saint-Nazaire, the acid silently worked its fatal magic. By mid-morning, German confidence had reached its peak. British prisoners were accounted for, dead bodies tallied, and fires aboard Campbeltown seemed contained. Engineers from the Marine engineering staff arrived, ready to plan the salvage of the dock gates. Routine work, they believed, difficult certainly, but within their expertise. Mecke authorized a full team to board the destroyer. They needed exact measurements, a precise understanding of the vessel's structure before any cutting could begin. Welders would navigate around fuel stores and ammunition, working with care to avoid accidents. Oberbootsman Heinz Müller led his team into the forward sections, meticulously measuring bulkheads and inspecting structural integrity. The ship was decades old, constructed during the previous war, yet its core design, American in origin, was solid. Campbeltown had been part of the Lend-Lease program, one of 50 destroyers transferred in 1940. As Muller ran his hand along a seemingly ordinary bulkhead, he brushed past 400 pounds of amytol, only 3 feet away. The cold steel was damp with morning mist. Nothing appeared suspicious. Nothing betrayed the ticking catastrophe beneath their feet. Meanwhile, in the dockmaster's office, officers discussed repair schedules. The gates, they concluded, would need replacement, but the dock itself was intact. Machinery could be repaired, pumping systems restored. 6 to 8 months, perhaps, and Saint Nazaire would resume its role. They were confident. They were wrong. None would live long enough to know the truth. By noon, over 40 German personnel were aboard or immediately surrounding Campbeltown. Engineers crawled through the ship's compartments. Welders prepared cutting tools. Officers debated the safest approach to free the destroyer from the gates. Curious onlookers, French civilians and German soldiers alike, gathered on the docks, witnessing what they assumed was a salvage operation. The acid had nearly completed its deadly work. At 12:35 p.m., precisely 4 hours and 1 minute after ramming the dock gates, Campbeltown detonated. The explosion was catastrophic. 4.5 tons of amytal detonated simultaneously. The force ripped forward into the dock gates and outward across the harbor. The destroyer's hull disintegrated. Metal fragments weighing hundreds of pounds launched into the air like deadly missiles. The forward section vanished instantly, obliterated in the initial shockwave. Mecca died instantly, along with everyone aboard. Officers on deck were torn apart before their bodies could process the reality of the blast. Below deck, Muller and his team were atomized, their experience and knowledge erased in a microsecond. The blast wave radiated outward at supersonic speed. Onlookers on the dock were swept away as if made of paper. Windows shattered for hundreds of meters. Roofs were torn from nearby buildings. The massive steel gates designed to hold back the Atlantic were obliterated. The northern gate was lifted from its foundation and hurled into the dry dock basin. The southern gate was twisted beyond recognition. In a single second, the destruction achieved what dozens of bombing raids had failed to accomplish. Casualties were staggering. Approximately 360 German personnel perished, though the exact number remained uncertain, as many bodies were vaporized or swept into the estuary. Among the dead were Saint Nazaire's most experienced dry dock engineers, men whose knowledge would have been invaluable in maintaining Germany's naval capabilities. Yet the strategic impact far outweighed the human loss. The Normandy dock had been Europe's largest Atlantic dry dock, capable of servicing vessels of up to 85,000 tons. It was the only facility outside Germany that could accommodate Tirpitz. With Saint Nazaire destroyed, the battleship could no longer risk Atlantic operations. Damage in combat would force her back to Norway, running a perilous gauntlet of Allied submarines, aircraft, and surface ships. Hitler ordered Tirpitz to remain confined to fjords, a powerful ship rendered strategically impotent by the destruction of a single dock. The British had lost 169 men among 611 participants. The cost had been high, but the achievement was extraordinary. One ship, transformed into a bomb, had shifted the naval balance. German forces learned an indelible lesson in ingenuity and deception. After Saint Nazaire, all captured vessels were treated with extreme suspicion. Inspection protocols were revised, and salvage operations were conducted from a safe distance. Too late for the men who had walked Campbeltown's deck that morning. They had admired the ship, measured bulkheads, planned methods to dismantle it safely, all while standing atop a ticking time bomb. Every pencil detonator, every hidden compartment, every ounce of explosive had been placed with deadly precision. 8 hours were enough for the commandos to escape or be captured. Enough for Germans to believe the mission had failed. Enough for maximum psychological and strategic effect. Corvette officers and Captain Buren, examining what they thought were fuel tanks, became part of the epicenter of the blast. Their bodies were never recovered. Expertise, planning, and professional skill all vanished in an instant. Even civilians caught in the blast were victims of circumstance, wiped out for daring to witness the operation. The crater left in the dock gates measured over 30 meters across, the steel and concrete foundations obliterated. Reconstruction would require fabrication from scratch, yet Germany lacked the resources and the war's focus had shifted. Saint Nazaire remained out of commission for the remainder of the war, only repaired fully in 1947, 5 years after the Campbeltown had completed its lethal mission. The impact rippled across the Atlantic. Tirpitz, though powerful, remained trapped. British convoys to Russia faced reduced threats. The strategic scale of the naval war shifted subtly, yet decisively in Britain's favor. One obsolete destroyer, modified and sailed into a harbor by men aware they were unlikely to survive, had changed the course of operations for the rest of the conflict. The genius of Operation Chariot was not just courage or destruction. It was invisibility, deception, and precise timing. The Germans saw a wreck. They failed to see the bomb beneath their feet. In the final seconds, as the chemical timers completed their silent work, every German engineer on board learned the ultimate lesson in horror and ingenuity. The destroyer they inspected was not merely a wreck. It was the most successful bomb of the entire war. The consequences of Operation Chariot stretched far beyond the shattered gates of Saint-Nazaire. The mighty Tirpitz, Germany's Atlantic juggernaut, was confined to the fjords of Norway, powerful yet impotent, its reach curtailed by the destruction wrought by a single, unassuming destroyer. British convoys bound for Russia faced far fewer dangers, and the Atlantic shipping lanes became incrementally safer. The balance of naval power had shifted subtly but unmistakably in Britain's favor. All of this, achieved not by vast fleets or endless bombing campaigns, but by the calculated courage of men willing to risk and ultimately sacrifice their lives for a single, audacious strike. That morning, German engineers walked through the wrecked hull of HMS Campbeltown, meticulously inspecting twisted metal, scorched compartments, and shattered machinery. They cataloged damage, measured bulkheads, and made notes for a salvage operation they believed was routine. They saw a wreck. They saw the aftermath of what appeared to be a failed raid. But they saw nothing of the truth. Hidden behind false partitions and disguised as mundane fuel tanks were 412 tons of explosives, each carefully engineered and timed. Acid silently devoured wires, a chemical clock counting down toward inevitable destruction. No amount of inspection, no procedure, no careful measurement could reveal it. Maker strode across the deck, confident in his observations, unaware that beneath his feet lay the most lethal cargo imaginable. Ben descended into the engine rooms, examining what he thought were simple mechanical failures, yet passed mere feet from the compartments destined to obliterate him. Miller ran his hand along cold, seemingly innocuous bulkheads, oblivious to the 400 pounds of high explosives lying in wait behind them. Every man aboard was competent, disciplined, and careful, yet all would fall victim to a plan so flawlessly conceived that even the most meticulous inspection could not uncover it. The genius of Operation Chariot was not in the bravery of the commandos alone, nor in the violent ramming of the dock gates. The genius was in the bomb itself, invisible, unassuming, waiting. The genius lay in the timing, orchestrated to ensure maximum German presence before detonation. The genius lay in the psychological deception, allowing the enemy to believe victory was theirs, that the threat had passed, and that the raid was a costly failure. The British had transformed a relic of a ship into a weapon of strategic consequence, a device that would ripple through naval operations for the remainder of the war. At precisely 12:35 p.m., the silent countdown ended. The acid had finished its work. The detonators fired. 4.5 tons of amytal exploded in an instant of unimaginable violence. Men, metal, and machinery were obliterated. The German engineers, the officers, the workers, all who had walked, measured, and observed, the truth was revealed in the last fraction of a second of their lives. The destroyer was no wreck. It was the deadliest bomb of the war. If this account left your heart racing, imagine what other forgotten acts of audacity history holds. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to uncover more hidden operations, daring raids, and stories of ingenuity that shaped the outcome of World War II. History is alive, thrilling, and shocking, and you've only just scratched the surface. Don't miss the next revelation. The past is waiting to astonish you.